Welcome to the CanesInSight Baseball Podcast. We got Mr. Perfect here, Javi Salas, co-host of the legendary Bullpen Mafia podcast. Again, this is the hottest baseball podcast, broader baseball podcast. Canes baseball right here. We'll talk about Marlins, major leagues, college baseball in general. Bullpen Mafia is the way to go. Javi's doing a great job. Toad the whole team out there. Awesome stuff. You see the swag, you see the hat coming to a city near you soon. Javi, how you doing?
I'm good, D. Happy to be back, man. Talk some Canes baseball. We're getting close, man. We're getting close to that fall. I know we got a long way to go before the games matter, but a couple important dates here when school starts, get that roster finalized.
No doubt. So shout out to Anajar and Levine Accident Attorneys, 1-800-747-FREE, 1-800-747-3733 if you or someone you care about has been in an accident. And let's also have a word from some of the best friends that Canes baseball has.
This episode of the CanesInsight podcast is brought to you by our friends at Sala Astorita & Cox, a boutique law firm focusing on securities regulatory matters, broker-dealer and investment advisor regulation, white-collar criminal defense, complex commercial litigation, and securities arbitration and litigation. The firm aggressively represents clients throughout the nation. Contact them now at 561-989-9080. or visit them online at salalaw.com.
All right, Haas. So listen, we talked about the pitchers last show that came in the portal recently, now shifting focus to what to me is the biggest need on the team after having watched these guys last year, looked at the stats, we've talked about it ad nauseum, the bats, the left-handed bats, the depth of bats from 1 to 9. And I think Miami's made a pretty big dent here with some of the names we're about to talk about.
Yeah, definitely. I think, both the pitching side and the hitting side, we talked about the pitching, but hitting was something that was a huge focus in this portal class. I know Miami was aggressive. They wanted to add not only impact pieces to surround a guy like Daniel Cuvée, but depth pieces to make sure that, the 7, 8, 9, 10, 11th guy off that bench all can contribute in a very positive way to this lineup.
Yeah, let's just get right to it, man, because I know talking to people around that know some things, I heard the catcher was a screaming need internally, that the defense last year, Scanlon had a nice year at the plate, but overall people were very, very concerned about the catching consistency, the ability to receive the ball and to throw runners out, which again, Scanlon had a pretty tough time doing, really controlling the running game. That was not there with Miami last year. And that was something they wanted to address. They brought in 2 freshmen, but of course, freshman catchers, that's a tough job. So they go out and go to a place that's had some pretty good experience at the catching position in the last decade or so, and that is Oregon State with Tanner Smith, 6 feet, 204 from Chandler, Arizona, somebody who started 32 games last year, not dominant with the bat, 221, 4 doubles, a triple, 5 home runs, 423 slug, but really his ability to control the running game and throw out runners, north of 50% was something that really, I think, attracted Miami to this player.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think Tanner Smith is one of the sort of hidden gems in this portal class, right? Because you talk about a major position of need. We always talk about the middle of the field, right? The catcher, shortstop, center field. That's where you want to be really solid offensively and defensively. Tanner Smith is going to fit the bill defensively. We know that. Obviously, the numbers back that up. You talked about Miami's woes last year, ranked at the bottom of the ACC in a lot of different catching metrics. You talk about the difficulties they had throwing runners out at second base, a lot of pass balls. Defensively was sort of a liability, a black hole for this Hurricanes ball club. You bring in a guy like Tanner Smith, who all the big league, scouts and people we've talked to say outstanding receiver of the baseball, great stealer of strikes, great framing ability, obviously the big arm to throw guys out, stealing second and third base. So this is the perfect cornerstone of your defensive alignment. You want to have a strong catcher. Again, we're bringing in experience. We talk about what teams that make it to these deep playoff runs, experience. You want to have an experienced catcher. This guy played at Oregon State. You talk about the success not only individually of catchers at Oregon State, but that program as a whole. They seem to be in Omaha year in, year out for the last 15 years. Really solid program. This is a guy who's going to come in day one, command the respect of that locker room, command the respect of that pitching staff. And it's going to be a full trust kind of thing. I know me as a pitcher, there's nothing better than having a catcher back there that you fully trust to block the balls up, steal a couple of strikes for you, and then if anyone tries to steal second base, he's going to throw them out. So I think Tanner Smith is a tremendous addition. Again, the bat doesn't necessarily wow you right now, but you wonder if there's something more in there, right? You wonder if, hey, You get this guy around. Look, and you're going to have a guy like Daniel Cuvée in this lineup this year, who's going to be one of the most dominant, if not the most dominant force in the ACC. The tide rises. People are going to get more fastballs in that lineup. You put in a guy like Tanner Smith, I would anticipate batting at, between 7 and 9 in that lineup. He's going to get a whole lot of fastballs, perhaps an opportunity for that average to jump, maybe hit a couple balls out. You never know, but you brought him here to be the defensive anchor of this ball club.
Yeah, and talk about potential and improvement. His numbers at the plate were actually better than Jack Scanlon's when Jack Scanlon was at Oregon. So you saw Scanlon make a tremendous leap here at Miami offensively. Tanner Smith hopefully can do the same. We know what he's going to do on defense. And, it's amazing. Who's going to really talk to this team about being in these, regional, super regionals, Omaha, and playing in these big games? I mean, there's really no one on the roster that can speak to that other than Tanner Smith, right? At this point.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. There's a very inexperienced team year over year, right? And I think one of the things that I keep talking about in Miami wanted to address is bringing experience. We saw experienced arms. We're going to see some experienced bats here. Guys that have sort of been around the block, maybe have not played in Omaha, have not seen super regionals. Obviously, Tanner Smith has, playing at Oregon State, but guys who have been around the college game, who sort of, bring an air, bring the culture back, understand they got to insulate Miami a little bit. They get to surround some of these young, talented players with some of these older, more grizzly veterans who want to do one thing and one thing only, and that's win ball games.
No doubt about it. And by the way, a trend as we go through these names, a lot of them, when you do research on them, you read what their fans say. I like to look at what Oregon State fans and, the fans of the school that's losing the players say about them on Twitter, on their forums. First of all, people are sad to lose these guys. And also a lot of talk about their character, their IQ, things that were needed, things that you called out repeatedly on this podcast. Tanner Smith, I know Oregon State was upset to lose him. They had another catcher who was hitting the ball well. So that was part of the pressure to get Tanner Smith, in the portal in the first place. But a lot of fans there were not happy that he was the one that took off because he's so good on defense and so steady. But a lot of praise externally for his just intangibles. And again, you see the results in terms of the defensive statistics. Another guy who to me is come from the same mold as far as being kind of the baseball rat you hear about. Harold Martinez coached this guy when he was at Coral Reef, a friend of ours, friend of the show, one of the better home run hitters in the ACC in his time. He coached this guy, and that is Jake Ogden out of Coral Reef, and then later University of North Carolina, Greensboro, now at the University of Miami. He's from Homestead. He's 6 foot 190, spent most of his time at third base, but projects potentially as a first baseman here at Miami. Also pitched a little bit. Looking at the numbers, he had a .313 batting average last year, .867 OPS, 8 homers, 45 RBIs, also stole 16 bags, was an all-star in the Cape, played for Harwich, was on the East All-Star team for the Cape alongside Daniel Cuvée. So that's something you might like to see. He had some pretty big homers as well. Really able to show the power. But again, baseball rat talking to Harold, the guy that really kind of overachieves and has ability to play all over the infield.
Yeah, that's the thing that really sticks out to me, D, is the ability to play all over the infield, a guy who can play third base. I wouldn't be surprised if Coach Arteaga can slot him in at second, play a little first base, maybe DH. Who knows if he can play one of the corner outfield positions with that athleticism. You mentioned the 16 stolen bags. So Ogden is a guy coming back to South Florida. You love to see that. I think as a former player, I'm sure the conversation between Coach Arteaga and Ogden had to be one that's extremely easy. You tell him, hey, the opportunity to play in front of your family and friends, come back home, a program that I'm sure he's been to Marklight dozens of times as a teenager, as a toddler. So I really like this pickup. So much to like about this profile in particular. Someone who obviously, has overachieved at every level. Now he's playing at the Cape. The numbers speak for themselves. Cape All-Star. I mean, the Cape Cod League, for those who aren't well versed, is the premier summer baseball league for collegiate players. It is where the best of the best at the collegiate level go and play. If you hit well at the Cape, if you pitch well at the Cape, it's usually a really good indicator for what your collegiate season will look like. So this guy's being praised as an all-star. You mentioned on our pitcher podcast, Griffin Hughes having a tremendous year, as well. So a lot of good is coming out of this portal class already. We've seen it at the summer league level. Again, it's not a one-to-one indicator of what the collegiate season will look like, but it's a very, very strong indication that, hey, these guys are not only having good collegiate season, but they're able to maintain it through the summer where there may be some distractions. They want to get home. These are the baseball rats that are continuing to play well well into 6 and 7 months into their baseball season.
Yeah, no, excited to see what he brings to the table. Like you mentioned, the experience. A couple other guys here that we'll get into are really playing a lot of summer ball as well. The next player to me is the most intriguing guy of maybe this whole portal class, at least to me. We watch College World Series, probably we talked about on this podcast offline. We talked about the SEC getting more physicality, getting more bodies. This guy looks like an SEC player all the way, talks like an SEC player. I'm shocked that he landed at the University of Miami, but I'm happy he did. And that is Todd Hudson out of Liberty. This is a big dude, 6'5", 230. He is a big left-handed hitter, a guy who was a two-way player, but profiles much more as a outfielder, first baseman, designated hitter. He's done all of that. Was a highly rated outfielder coming out of South Carolina. Again, two-way guy at Liberty, 4.75 ERA his first year. ERA ticked up in 31 innings last year to 7.26, but really blossomed at the plate. 286, 383, 597 slash line, 981 OPS, 11 homers, and really started, moving the ball to all fields towards the end of the season. Really impacted the ball in terms of that sweet left-handed swing. Cut down on the strikeouts just from watching his game logs and not talking, but listening to people around the Liberty program. It really kind of came together for him as the season went on, which makes sense for a great athlete like this who was a pitcher. Has some speed as well, some nice 60-yard times from perfect game. I'm excited about this dude, a point guard in basketball at 6'5" with some physicality to him. What do you see when you add a guy like Todd Hudson to the mix that we're talking about?
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right, and I think you mentioned it. We haven't seen cowboy boots in the Hurricane locker room in a long time, right? So I think it was long overdue for this profile of player to make his way down to Miami, and you're absolutely right. I'm excited for this for Hudson for his career to sort of take off at Miami. Again, this is not going to be the Canes that you want to run into in an alley with some of these big physical bodies, right? You talk about the 6'5" frame, left-handed swing. Obviously, one of the big things that the Canes added this offseason, a lot of left-handed bats, Steve. We're going to have the ability to go right, left, all throughout that lineup, protect Daniel Cuvée. It's going to be tough for relievers to come in and sort of get a feel for what this lineup can do. And a guy like Hudson's going to slot right in. You hope in the middle of that lineup next year, a left-handed bat, protect Cuvée. The versatility excites me as well. A guy like Ogden, you talk about Ogden, you talk about Hudson, you talk about a guy like Derrick Williams. All these guys who could play third, first, left, corner, outfield, all these things that, you're looking for when you're trying to write up your lineup card. You mentioned a two-way guy. I anticipate he's going to stick it as a hitter here at Miami. I wouldn't anticipate him seeing much of him on the mound. That's not to say he may get some opportunities here and there, but I anticipate Tiago's going to want him to be a force in the middle of that lineup. A guy who came on late, hit 11 home runs last year. You start hitting behind a guy like Cuvée. I mentioned that for Tanner Smith. A lot more fastballs for everybody else in that lineup. People are going to elevate their level of play when you're playing with a guy like Cuvée. I'm excited for what Todd Hudson can bring, both on the field and off the field. I think it's a very welcome sign to get the diversity of all these players, right? You're seeing a much more national search for this Hurricanes team. Obviously, there's going to be some local flair, but the profiles of guys from like a Todd Hudson coming to Miami are really going to elevate both the culture and the personality of this team.
So let's talk a little bit more about that lefty impact, right? When you lose Sear, you lose Torres, you lose some prominent righties carrier. Now bringing in so many left-handed hitters, with the fastball, of course, being the right-handed fastball being the dominant pitch that you're going to be seeing in college baseball, and also the emergence of some nasty sliders. How important is it to have left-handed hitters, and why is it so important to have left-handed hitters at this level?
Yeah, I just think you want to have different looks for pitching staffs. You don't want guys to, get into a groove. And I think what we've seen at the collegiate level is, a program like Florida, Kevin O'Sullivan does a really good job of managing his bullpen. But if you're not going to throw right-handed and left-handed batters at a pitching staff, it's very easy for him to continue to just throw out his best right-handed sliders, the sinker slider guys, the high-velocity right-handed pitchers. Whereas if you have a lineup that can mix and match, give variety of looks, and look, these are all different profiles, right? You talk about a Daniel Cuvée. Daniel Cuvée had no issues hitting anybody last year. That's he's going to be a given. He's going to bat third in the lineup. But if you can start mixing and matching, and I think what Coach Arteaga is going to have the luxury of having this upcoming season is having like 13 bats that he can really trust in any given situation. I think that's really, really important. we saw a drop off from, the replacement level player for the Miami Hurricanes. You lose a guy like Jason Torres and Blake Sear in the middle of the season. The end of the year, we were very, very fortunate that Daniel Cuvée was able to sustain his level of play, right? Because it got to a point where we kept saying on this podcast, why are they pitching to him? Why is anyone taking the risk of Daniel Cuvée hitting home runs to all parts of the field when the rest of the lineup doesn't necessarily look like what it did on opening weekend or first couple weekends of ACC play? So when you have depth to a lineup, when you have variety of right-handed and left-handed batter, it makes it much more difficult for a pitching staff to hone in on a Daniel Cuvée. They got to be careful how they pitch around because, hey, a Todd Hudson hitting behind Daniel Cuvée may have 12 home runs. He's a left-handed bat facing a righty who's not very good against lefties. All of a sudden, these matchups look a lot more favorable for the Hurricanes.
Let's go to another left-hander, right, while we're on the topic. And that's another very interesting name, which is Max Galvin. Originally from Dallas, Texas, goes to IMG, Miami-Dade College right nearby, ends up at Oklahoma State, a very talented outfield, red shirts, now at the University of Miami, 6'2", 191, plays all over the outfield, double lefty there, bats and throws left-handed. And he's somebody that's gone to the Northwoods League and just torn it up. You're talking about 50 games, which is a lot of games for the summer. 9 home runs, 55 RBIs, 17 steals, 26 walks on 30 strikeouts. So he's not hurting you there. 337 batting average, 409 on base percentage, 553 slug for a night, 62 OPS. He was the home run champion, all-star there, and just somebody who I think he hit like 400 or something like that, close to that at Miami-Dade. A lot of performance from this guy and intriguing tools.
Yeah, extremely intriguing. I think honing in on that summer experience, I mean, the Northwoods League is as close as you're going to get to a minor league level season in terms of the travel. They play every single day. So he's played over 50 games already this summer. We mentioned he didn't get a whole lot of burn at Oklahoma State this past season. I think he took that red shirt, but he's making up for that in droves by playing in the Northwoods League, right? He's already had 200 at-bats. I'm sure there's a couple weeks left in the season. Home run derby champ, all-star game MVP. Done everything you could possibly ask for this offseason and will be a huge piece for this Hurricane lineup. Obviously, a guy that didn't really get the notoriety during the portal period because we didn't really know a lot about him. Not a lot of stats from him at Oklahoma State. You mentioned his performance at Miami-Dade College, but the more recent stuff, there just wasn't a lot out there on him. He's gone out there. He's proven himself in the Northwoods League with his performances. I'm really excited for this profile of player. Again, this is another piece you just add to the war chest, right? You have all these guys, and we're going to have a multitude of outfielders, right? It's going to be a crowded outfield room. But again, the cream's going to rise to the top. It's going to be a great competition in the fall. A guy like Max Galvin is going to come in off a torrid hot summer. So he's going to come in with a ton of confidence, going to want to, etch his name in that lineup. And again, it's another piece that you can hopefully add to the middle of the lineup, a left-handed bat to protect Daniel Cuvée.
So let's go back. We talked about so many lefties. Let's get a right-handed, just mash or somebody who is going to swing big. And that's Derrick Williams out of Wichita State, 6 foot, 210, bounced around, had some junior college experience as well. Florida Southwestern State College, Mineral College in the Missouri area, which I believe is where he's from. Look at his Wichita State numbers: 14 home runs, 44 RBI, 318 batting average, 615 slug, 1040 OPS. He did strike out a little bit, 56 strikeouts on 20 walks, but somebody who really impacts the ball and seems like some of the things that you lost with a Sear and Jason Torres going out the door.
Yeah, look, and I think you're obviously looking to replace some of that production with Sear and Torres, and you take a guy like Derrick Williams, right? Proven production at Wichita State, a really good baseball program. He's going to come in and offer some of that, thump in the middle of the lineup. And one of the things that was interesting about Williams, led the team in hit by pitch, right? So a big guy hitting the ball out of the park, also a team guy, right? Not afraid to take those hit by pitch, get himself on first base. So something that's important, that on base percentage, we always talk about it. Can't steal first base. So guys who can get to first base, guys who can hit for power. The strikeout will be, something that comes into play as you get into ACC play, probably a little bit better pitching. But again, the threat of hitting the ball out of the park, doubles and home runs is what pitchers really worry about in today's day and age. You put this guy, maybe in front, behind of Daniel Cuvée, who knows, another power threat for this Hurricane lineup. And I think one of the things that was addressed this offseason, D, which is so important, was we relied so heavily on Daniel Cuvée down the stretch, right? It was a one-man show. It was a superhero show. How are we going to, figure out how to score runs? It was usually like, let's wait for Daniel Cuvée to do something special. 1 through 9, this lineup looks a lot deeper. There's a lot more areas where this Hurricane lineup can do some damage. We saw 7, 8, 9 last year was somewhat of a black hole. Miami couldn't figure out how to manufacture runs down there. Derrick Williams might be a guy who might bat 7th for you, right? And he's hit 14 home runs at Wichita State last year. So think about a pitcher's psyche having to face a guy like Derrick Williams with a threat of a home run batting 7th or 8th in a lineup. It's tough to pitch to that. It's tough to understand, hey, where am I going to get my outs? Where are the easy wins for me as a pitcher? Derrick Williams is not going to be one of those, and he's going to be a force in this Hurricane lineup.
Yeah, you mentioned it. It's just the total. You see that when you're watching these College World Series teams. There's not a lot of breaks in those lineups at all. I mean, they have heavy hitters. They have guys like Cuvée. At least he's great, but they have 1 or 2 guys like that once you get to that high end SEC level. But they also have the depth. Even teams like Virginia Tech that didn't have the high end players, they did have depth throughout, and that hurt Miami. We are hoping to get some of that here with some of these names. One last name at a position that I don't think has the competition. We mentioned outfield, all those guys. It's nice competition there. We didn't even talk about Bobby Marsh, who we've talked about on our previous podcast. We'll talk about Mikey Torres as we get into the high school class. So competition there. One position where it's lacking a little competition is the shortstop position. But you did land a player out of high school who I've heard great things about, from our boy Harold Martinez, who we'll bring on the show later on this month, from you before he was even on UM's radar, and also from folks I know at the professional ranks, all singing the praises of a player close to my heart, Belen Jesuit grad, Brandon Degote, out of Belen, Ohio State commit. This is somebody who committed to Ohio State, or signed with Ohio State, I should say. Ohio State's coach, Lisa Campbell, he's now back on the market. I'm told he had a lot of draft interest, but ultimately did not get the bonus that he required to leave leave University of Miami in that opportunity. So he does go to University of Miami, his hometown school, and 5'11", 175 righty. The profile doesn't jump out at you. He does pitch a little bit as well. But the term I hear with him, and you know him better than me, baseball rat.
Yeah, look, I've seen him play a couple times. I'm close to a lot of buddies in the Belen program that I think from day one identified him as, this guy is a bona fide shortstop. He can play at the next level. Again, the measurables aren't necessarily what you're looking at here, but he's a gamer. He will, if he has the ability to play shortstop day one, it's going to be a no-brainer kind of situation. He's going to be a plug-and-play guy, really solid. His big league bloodlines. His brother played in the major leagues, was in the Marlins organization, made his way with the Astros organization, played at Long Beach State. Obviously, you look at this profile and you say, we're so glad that Ohio State's head coach left and gave us the opportunity to sort of pounce on this player. You talk about the MLB draft, right? So this guy had the ability to go out and play. He was, big time interest from Major League ball clubs. Miami's brought in this player. It's sort of a gift wrap situation. I think if you're Coach Arteaga and Coach Fencer, this is a guy you can't wait to put in your system. I think he's going to raise the culture, the chemistry of that team. And look, D, and I know this is a big Belen guy thing, but you might have a real opportunity to have a starting middle infield from Belen Jesuit, which is a tremendous sort of notch in the feather in the cap for what that program has become. Obviously, the facilities are absolutely insane at Belen right now. We saw the Marlins, all their draft picks practice there last weekend. So something to be said for Brandon Degote showing up on campus. I think this is something to be really excited about for Canes fans. You're really going to like this profile of player. Really a great kid, first and foremost. Gamer, absolute baseball rat. I think he's going to be your starting shortstop day one, and he's going to be the kind of guy who's going to play there for the next 3 to 4 years.
Yeah, I was at Belen with my son a couple of weeks ago. Saw Jazz Chisholm, dearly departed, out there digging battery practice. Also, Mandy Alvarez from the A's, another local guy. But obviously, I want to see that Belen middle infield. I talked to somebody who compared Dorian to Degote, and he said that Degote is, with all respect to what Dorian has become, which is, in my opinion, a very good ACC, second baseman based on his production last year. He thought that Degote was kind of another level potentially as far as what he could be. If that doesn't happen and you don't get the Belen middle infield this year, how do you see that playing out? Because it's not like there's a ton of guys with that skill set on the roster right now up the middle. Yeah,
look, I obviously the shortstop's a position. Yeah, I know we're waiting on a high schooler that's in the mix. Sort of, we don't know if he's going to sign or show up on campus. So I don't want to speculate on what the shortstop position looks like. We have 2 signees. Brandon Degote, we know, will be in the building on day one when school starts. We're waiting on one other shortstop who's in the draft, sort of negotiation process. We'll find out very shortly. Today's, Monday, July 29th. By Thursday is the signing deadline. So we'll find out what that, final shortstop class looks like. But again, that was a position that I think Miami had identified. I know we mentioned Randall Diaz had some interest with the university. He has since signed. He was at Indiana State last year. So it's one of the most important, if not the most important position on the baseball diamond. You want to make sure, number one, that you have a very solid defender there. Number two, you hope that it's a defender that can hit a little bit, provide some thump in the lineup. As it stands right now, Dugoti's probably our best bet at shortstop. And I think that that's probably something that, if you're Coach Arteaga, Coach Fenster, it's not necessarily the position you want to be in where you have one guy sort of for this really critical, crucial position. But I think, the IQ and the persona, the character of the player that you are bringing in Dugoti, I mentioned the big league bloodlines, is someone that you can trust to play that position. But there's a lot of dust that needs to settle between now and Thursday, which is a signing deadline, and then, up until school starts. So look, there is a little runway here where there may be some players that are still in the mix, players that Miami's still in conversations with. School has not started yet. So there is about 3 or 4 weeks where there may be some more additions to the roster. And look, in this portal era, it's a Wild West. Who knows what the next 3 to 4 weeks may bring? We've seen the transformation of this roster over the last 2.5 months since the season ended. So there is a little bit of runway left. Don't count the Canes out in any of these conversations with remaining portal players.
Yeah, so stay tuned to the Canes Insight Baseball podcast. We are going to be monitoring everything. So most of the hay is in the barn, but there are some bullets left in the chamber, and we'll see where Miami goes. Obviously, Friday's starter is going to be a big need, potentially another middle infielder, potentially another shortstop. We will see where it goes. We'll keep you locked in. So again, Javi, appreciate it. Like and subscribe to this podcast. Like and subscribe to Bullpen Mafia. Follow us on the socials. And again, go Canes.